life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good, good. Good morning, sun. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good, good. Good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good morning, sun. Good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love. Good, good. Good morning, sun.
And we are live, I hope. If this works, I mean, this is pretty sketchy. I think I need some duct tape. So, Mo, good morning. I'm assuming you can hear me. Awesome. I don't have coffee. Let me grab some water one moment. Okay. I had to come in very early because this is the podcast studio and it has bookings in there. So I had to sneak in before an early morning podcast, hence my unusual schedule. I don't even have coffee, which is sad. So this is the duct tape and twine edition, and we will have a prop later. Up. There we go. I don't know if you can hear that, but that is the sound of an avocado falling on the roof. This is how big the avocados are from the tree right above me. Every time they fall and there's a storm going on, it makes this crazy bang. So if you see me jump out of the chair, I'll lift the avocado. Okay. There's rain right now. There's a storm. Let's see if the power holds out. I am not on UPS. I just realized that. Probably not a smart move. So let's see if I can get through this. Where is my PowerPoint? I'm doing this on 2 monitors, which is super sketch. I don't know if I'll be around long enough, but ask some questions. I do see the chat off to the side, so if I'm looking that direction, that's what I'm doing there. And let's plow through it. So the weekly projects were to survive I think it was some type of tropical storm that basically nailed El Salvador. Like if you look at the map of where the rain was, where the storm is hitting hardest, in all of Central America, it was just aimed straight at El Salvador. Very interesting. And there was supposed to be, well, I'll get to it. So we went from Naranja, which was the first clue that there was a problem. They started canceling some events, and then we started to hear rumors of certain things, and we didn't know quite what was going on. But then they upgraded to Roja, which was kind of a bad sign. They shut down schools, government facilities, and started to prepare emergency plans. So it was pretty crazy. And after some digging, I found that they expected 20 to 30 or more inches of rain in 5 days. So that was pretty crazy. For those of you who don't measure in bananas like Americans, that's 500 to 750 millimeters in 5 days or more, depending on your area. So that was pretty crazy. And I think on average, just on the weather forecast on the phone, it said roughly 3 to 4 inches a day actual. So it was pretty out of control. So there was massive flooding, unfortunately. I read that 11 people died in the first couple days. So it's pretty bad. Roads were washed out, houses, mudslides, things like that. So it has been an adventure. Everything has been okay in Berlin, except it did destroy some facilities, took out power lines, internet outages, things like that. So we're still here. It is pouring right now. We have, I think this is the last major day of the storm. It's rained just nonstop the last 2 days. It's like a whitewater river down the streets here. So, yep. Wish I had some photos, but it's too crazy. I'm not going out there. But people here are super tough. It's flooding down the streets. It's white water just splashing all over the place. People are just walking along with their umbrellas like it's nothing. I mean, I don't know how they do it. Props to Salvadorans, Berliners. They are crazy tough. So, Monday, lunes, I attended a 7 a.m. workshop with Jeremy Viska. And I apologize, the rain is pouring down. I can barely hear myself. I did enable a noise gate, so hopefully you don't hear it. And if you hear the avocado, just say avocado in the chat. Okay, so Monday, lunes, introduction to BC warehousing. And I attended this because I knew nothing about BC warehousing. Like, I didn't even know what that was. I knew you had inventory and you had a warehouse, or what Business Central, I'm learning, calls a location. But what is BC warehousing? And it was a fascinating introduction for me into the warehousing functionality. So directed put away, directed pick. You can prioritize bins. You can prioritize items in bins. So really interesting functionality. And it turns out that David here in Berlin has worked at, I mentioned before, he's worked at a massive distribution facility in the US. So he knows what it's like to have 50 bays across where the trucks line up, and he's cross-docking in the distribution center. And so I mentioned some of these terms, like, yep, done that, done that, done that. So he knows like really high-end warehousing at a large distribution center, which is something I've never seen. I can imagine it, but I've never actually done it. So that was really cool. So he's going to dig into warehousing. He's already watching the videos. He's already digging into the functionality. He's already looking at the warehouse setup, the location setup. So it's been a great coincidence. So if you have not taken one of Jeremy's workshops, head on over to sparebrain.com/ I think it's education. Just go to sparebrain.com, find his workshops or his classes, and attend one. And I missed one of them because my internet, but there is, the next one is coming up, is on a discussion around automated testing and why and how to use it. Not so much how to implement it, but like what are the scenarios, and just having a conversation around when and why. Okay. And on Monday, really bad storms, power outages, internet outages. We had to do the training here remotely because of the rain and craziness. And we talked about inventory and fiscal periods, all about fiscal periods. What are they for? Why are they used? How are there different fiscal periods, calendar periods, things like that? How do you configure that in Business Central? So that's what we talked about. And, this was just interesting thing that I learned this week. Tanya actually shared this with me and our developer. We were looking at the customer ledger entries page. And on this page, we happen to notice there are no notes. And we're like, whoa, because we're supposed to customize the notes functionality on this page. And we look at this saying, okay, this is going to be a problem. Well, then my developer looked at the code of this page and he saw that notes were hidden or disabled. I forget the term. So they were just hidden. So he was able to enable or make them visible via code, but we were kind of puzzled. And what Tanya pointed out to us, which just from the UI, it would have never occurred to me to look for this particular feature, but it turns out that notes can be hidden via personalization. And apparently links and attachments and maybe, it just didn't occur to me to that section, given the way that control works for notes, that you could use personalization to hide or show. So that was kind of one of those little tiny obscure things. There's thousands of them. It just wouldn't have occurred to me to look there. And this is kind of one of the frustrating things about the personalization functionality. It's great, but when a field doesn't exist, it just doesn't always occur to me to go into personalization and look for it. I'm like, oh, there's no XYZ field on this page. What's going on? This is going to be a problem. And so I'm constantly having to remember, oh, okay, let me go into personalization, see if it's there. Sometimes I can find it. Other times it may be named something different than I expected, and you really got to hunt for it. Other times there just isn't the field that you're looking for. So it is a bit challenging, but there's your trivia of the week. You can hide notes on a page using personalization. I didn't know that. Okay, moving on to Tuesday, martes. It was mildly raining on Tuesday morning, fortunately, so I was able to sneak out, go get some desayuno típico at the local nice restaurant. Beautiful restaurant there. And I jumped on a morning's team call with 28 people from all around the world. So that was pretty crazy. I was tethered to my cell phone, not even on Wi-Fi. Oftentimes my cell phone provides better data speeds and usability than the Wi-Fi wherever I'm at. So had a Teams call with 28 people from around the world sitting here in Berlin, El Salvador while eating my breakfast. So that was pretty crazy. And then I worked on the endless saga of me trying to write the statement of work. I still haven't done it now that I think about it. The AR payment and apply and an adjustments PT that I'm working on, you would think cash receipts would be pretty straightforward. It's not. All sorts of scenarios that make cash receipts a mess. Not just the cash receipt process, but the apply process. So we're working on that for this customer who has kind of a unique process. And then we had training in the afternoon for the Center of Excellence, and it was accounting basics. And this was tough for me. I have a degree in economics and accounting, believe it or not, and because it's a lot easier than engineering and physics. So I taught for the first time, I believe, accounting basics. And it was hard not because the accounting concepts were necessarily hard, but describing a liability and a debit and a credit and a balance sheet and an income statement, like for those of us who are familiar with it, you'd be like, well, it's just a balance sheet. Assets, liabilities, like what's the big deal? And you debit and credit stuff. But when you're having to describe it for students who do not have an accounting background, you realize this is not something you can describe coherently in 5 minutes. So it was interesting. I just realized I was not very good at it. And so we tried several times, and over the course of 2.5 hours, I think I finally came up with an explanation that made sense to the students, and they started to get it, and they're like, oh, that increases your liability on the balance sheet. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you for pulling through despite my horrible instructions. So it was surprisingly challenging. So if you're up for a challenge, try teaching someone accounting basics from scratch, like a family member, to get them to understand. And it is humbling, let's put it that way. It humbled me at least. So that was my Tuesday afternoon, and I was very happy, very proud of the two students for sticking in there. Despite my bumbling explanations, they figured out some analogies that worked for them. So I need to work on that, improve it, and get more proficient with, I don't know, I think analogies may be the only way to go, because you need to kind of describe things in other terms, because these are all new terms and concepts. Okay, moving on to Wednesday, miércoles. I finished the Unify network here, which was quite an accomplishment. Cobbled it together. We've got the cloud key, plus we've got 2 access points now, And we've got two switches set up, two PoE switches. Those are going to drive 5 Ethernet runs here, and the access points are PoE. So those are up and running. We've got our SSIDs set up. We've got our basic settings, so we'll refine it, but pretty slick. It's great coverage throughout all of the 5 or 6 or whatever concrete rooms here, cinder block rooms, and signal season pretty good. So yeah, so that is set up. In Berlin, El Salvador, I like to say we have the highest and fanciest wireless network in all of Berlin, El Salvador, so I'm very proud of that. Oh, we have a banging avocado. Just fell on the roof again. Okay, and I don't know why, but something is going on, a Windows update, an Office update. Something is causing my laptop to go absolutely haywire because Microsoft logins are just going absolutely berserk on my laptop. It's logging me out of everything. It's saying that my computer's trusted platform module has malfunctioned, which I don't think it's a hardware thing. I think it's a Windows and AAD add-in or Microsoft authentication thing. And so every single thing is freaking out. Every single day, I have to re-log into every app, and then it gives me errors. And I don't know if it's just a total glitch in Windows and Office or if it has anything to do with me being here. I will be on Wi-Fi 1 minute, then the Wi-Fi will be glitchy. I will tether to my cell phone, and then I will suddenly appear as if I go from El Salvador to, say, Denver, Colorado, through the tethering. It's very strange how cell phone tethering to the US works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Essentially VPN me to the US. And then sometimes I do need to hop onto a VPN to get past blocks from El Salvador traffic. So I'm literally, it's like I'm jumping back and forth between geographic locations. So I don't know if that's playing a role, but man, it has been wild. And I worked on this glorious studio. I set up the green screen, which you cannot see, but there is a green cloth that I bought and brought with me. And hats off to vMix. vMix has the best chroma key I've ever used. I've tried OBS, I've tried Premiere, and like in theory, those tools have a little more dials and knobs and features, but they just don't work as well. vMix, you literally click one button, it's a profile one, boom, instantly just works. And I do have some spill that I can see, I believe, but I mean, the fact that the chroma key is working great is amazing. I just have exposed light bulbs in front of me and a green screen behind me. So hats off to vMix. Okay, so then, this is part more of the sketchy logins. OneDrive logged me out, Outlook logged me out, PowerPoint, Office, everything. It was just this slew of errors. Oh man, I'm talking through this and I had great photos. Look at that. So that's my green screen. Yeah, pretty fancy, huh? So it's pinned to the wall and wrinkles and all, it works great. I'm shocked, and that's my sketchy setup right there. I've got a Focusrite plugged in. I've got the XLR dynamic mic, and I'm using every port on this laptop. It's just miraculous that it actually works. So, educational opportunities. I mentioned this before. Head on over to sparebrain.com/education and sign up for Thinking BC Test App Strategies if you are developing any PTEs or AppSource apps for Business Central. June 24th and June 27th, 2.5 hour class with Jeremy, focusing on what to test and why. Like, we know how to test, we know the technical elements, but we're like, what tests do we create? Especially when we're starting from scratch. Like, did a record save? Well, it's like, we found that to be an utterly useless test. We can do it, but did a record save? Do we really expect that to fail, given that we're predefining the inputs? So my questions are around, like, what use cases, what scenarios are we looking to test? Are we testing what happens when a user enters a -37 or enters, banana in a date field? Like, what are we checking for? Because as I mentioned before, I cannot possibly anticipate the crazy things that an end user might do or mistakes that people might make and what they might click on that we didn't anticipate. So I prefer to kind of wait for some of those things to break before I add validation and testing into the application. So I'm kind of curious what Jeremy recommends here. Okay, upcoming events. Próximo eventos, same list from last time. Tech Bayanahan in Manila, Philippines in August. If you're up for a cool vacation, hop on over to Philippines, sign up for Tech Bayanahan. Days of Knowledge America, September in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know that I will be there. Summit North America, October in San Antonio, Texas. I will be there. Booked my flight, booked my hotel. Directions EMEA 2024, November, Vienna, Austria. Submit a session if you're going to be there and want to speak. Do a presentation. Go for it. And you better submit because I know they get a ton of presentations. So submit and make it good, make it, flashy, exciting, interesting, new, fresh, whatever adjectives you want to use. And the tool of the week is Tailscale VPN service. Living on a volcano, this is going to be a VPN ad, right? Living on a volcano, you might want to be able to connect around the world, connect to your home network. And yes, I have a VPN to my office, but sometimes you do not want to do a full VPN connection. As I'm learning, when I connect to my home VPN, all of a sudden my traffic suddenly jumps from El Salvador to the United States, and every service I have starts to freak out. So what is kind of nice about Tailscale is I can predefine the connections to my devices, my servers, my hosts, my virtual machines, my VMs back in my office network. I can connect just directly to those without redirecting my traffic, without touching the VPN or having a VPN on my laptop. So it's a little more under the radar, and it has come in handy for many scenarios. So I'm just constantly bopping in. I just did it to check my settings for the live streaming. So check out Tailscale VPN, and I know there's Cloudflare and others. I've tried them. They just don't have the same capabilities for what I'm using. Tailscale, I think, has a better, I'm hoping, authentication mechanism. It is a little more theoretically secure. It's a little more isolated than what I tried with Cloudflare and the others. So super cool. It is multi-platform. It is Windows, Linux, Mac, iOS, Android. So this is what it looks like from my laptop. I can just click on my devices, grab one of those IP addresses. It's like a static IP address in my virtual private network that it creates. And I can RDP directly to any of these IP addresses. So it is super slick. And so I just set up RDP connections to my LAN IP addresses if I'm fully VPN'd in, or my Tailscale IP addresses if I don't want to VPN in, and I need to have both options given what I'm doing. Okay, and Thursday, Jueves. We finally, by we, I mean my developer, Dave, who handled all of this. We finally got artifacts to SharePoint. So cheers. This was trickier than we thought, not because it was like super duper complex, but just because you're trying to figure out all the details and pieces and settings and how to go about it. And it was not obvious. So it took us, with help from Cosmo Alpaca, a couple weeks to figure out the correct way or the best way to get our build pipelines to fire an artifact. I believe it's called a release pipeline. And so we have our build pipelines. Then we needed to, finally, we figured out after 2 weeks that we needed a release pipeline to pull our artifact and then push it to we're using blob storage as an intermediary, just based on how we prototyped it. So we have all our artifacts going to our blob storage. And then we are pushing, for now, we're just using Power Automate. We are pulling from blob storage and pushing to SharePoint. So this is pretty cool. And the goal of this is to make all of our new build artifacts accessible to our functional consulting team so that they don't have to ask for them. They don't have to go hunting in DevOps. They don't have to, find another repository to find them. It's dropped right in a SharePoint site that they can access in their tenant. We have two separate organizations. So this is not simple. We're doing cross-organization file transfers here. And so we're, jumping through quite a few hoops, but it works. Artifacts are there. I literally yesterday just pulled this 24027 artifact. I tested it and I was able to send a release with a user guide to our functional consultants to deploy and test. So that was super cool. If you are not doing this, whether you're using ALGO for GitHub, Azure DevOps with ALOps, or Azure with Alpaca, whatever you're using, one, you do need a DevOps solution. I strongly, highly, highly recommend it. Two, I recommend checking out, make sure to have pipelines, first of all, and then check out how to do a release pipeline in order to push your artifacts somewhere where people can actually get to them. I do not consider the pipeline artifact location in DevOps to be a suitable or advisable or a wise place to have your functional consultants go. Like, it's just a terrible place to have them navigate. And they don't normally go there. Why make them go there? Our team, we discussed options, and just for convenience, they said SharePoint's probably the easiest place to go. So that's what we're doing. We can move it theoretically to Teams channel. We can move it to a CRM now that we've got the artifact out and in an accessible blob storage. So check it out. Okay, moving on. And I hope this thing's still on. I am recording in case I am getting kicked off or it's not working, but Friday, Viernes, here I am, early Friday morning. It is 8:30 Volcano time, doing a live stream. We'll do a morning BC class with one student. It's raining, so we're going to be remote. So we're going to work on career interviews, resume, career planning, things like that. And then I have an afternoon class. So it's going to be a busy day. I have to do my statement of work throughout the day. So with that, moving on to the excellence update. These are a few photos from the photographer who visited and came up and photographed our program. And the students have now finished over 24 hours of training from the Business Central ERP Center of Excellence training program on the side of a volcano. So David and Jocelyn, congratulations. They have finished the business process, accounting, and introductory Business Central training. So we went in a lot of directions. They made a lot of progress, and they have certificates of attendance for the business process and accounting training program through Gutenberg certificates. So congratulations on that accomplishment, and hats off, Steve, for surviving for I don't know how long. I think I've been here 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So now that the training is progressing, what is going on this weekend? El fin de semana, we are hosting visitors. We have a van load of, I think, 7 people coming up, including our driver, Napoleon. And so they rented out an entire hotel, and they're coming to visit the Berlin Center, Berlin Community Center here, the podcast studio, the Career Center where I am hosted. And we will then have class on Saturday, and hopefully the rain goes away and we get some sunshine. So here's to a hopefully dry weekend. And then lastly, Q&A. Well, one of the students, Jocelyn, she actually taught me something. Yesterday, so I do a session where I say, hey, your homework is come up with questions for Steve. And you have to come up with some clever and, insightful, thoughtful, difficult, whatever, easy, I'll take easy, questions for Steve about Business Central, about business process, about accounting, about consulting, about any of this. and ask me those questions, and I have to answer them. And so Jocelyn said, what is a blanket sales order? And what was wild was that I had never heard of a blanket sales order. I've heard of blanket purchase orders. That's pretty standard. But it turns out that Business Central has blanket sales orders. I didn't know that. So we checked it out, and really I need to compare it to a traditional blanket purchase order. To me, it looked more like a sales order template for a customer. You just set up this template, you say create sales order, and it creates a copy of it. So I don't know that it's truly equivalent to a blanket purchase order, but it's an interesting feature that I've never heard anyone mention before. People have mentioned I forget the term, it's like sales order templates or recurring sales order lines or something like that, which I've never used because just the use case for it doesn't seem intuitive for me. It doesn't seem to fit typical business processes. But a blanket sales order, I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So if you have customers making just simple recurring orders, you go there and you click a button and boom, that customer then has their standard order. Now, reality, I don't know how often you'd use that, but it was interesting. I then asked, she had another good question about putting sales orders on hold. Now, during the class yesterday, we looked at putting customers and vendors on hold. And my interpretation is that the Business Central functionality of vendor and customer holds is not very good. I need to revisit it to see if I'm missing any options, but it was basically place on hold, and that is it. Everything about that customer vendor item is blocked. I think the term is blocked, but it may vary between vendor and customer versus an item. But anyway, so I need to look at that and compare it to Dynamics GP, which leads me to April 2017, which is why this central queue question, can you put a sales order on hold, answered in Dynamics GP. And I was like, why is it saying in Dynamics GP? Well, it turns out that I, in April 2017, made this video about Dynamics 365 financials. This is pre-Business Central. I made a video comparing holds in Business Central, and these were purchasing transaction holds, comparing GP to financials, what it was called at the time. I have zero recollection of making this video. I have no idea why I made this video. I don't remember any of the content, but it's me, it's on YouTube, and it's me comparing the hold functionality of GP to financials at that time. So I'm going to watch that again, see if anything has changed or improved in Business Central. I'm getting the impression it has not. And in this particular case, I suspect that Dynamics GP has better hold functionality at the master record level and at the transaction level, because there are a few options for holds in Dynamics GP. And I have had several customers use this functionality. They will have a payment hold on a customer, or they'll have a payable hold at the transaction level without putting a hold on the entire vendor. So that was interesting. So with that, and apparently there's one last slide. Oh, it was out of order. So that is my YouTube video from 7 years ago, a whopping 148 views, where I compared GP and Dynamics 365 financials. Don't know where that came from, but that is an Easter egg in Central Queue, believe it or not. And with that, that wraps up the volcano. Oh, wow. Okay. I guess you get to see the PowerPoint slide. That wraps up the volcano edition of episode 125 from Berlin, El Salvador. So cheers, have a good weekend, and I am out of here.